Today, I want us to look at the book of Psalms. Psalms is a unique book in the Bible because the evidence leads us to believe that it was written by about six different people. And because it's been written by many people, it was actually probably written over a large span of time. The things that we read in Psalms were probably written over a 1,000-year span or more. A lot of the passages that I tend to draw closer to in Psalms, I think were written by David. Um, Perhaps a lot of it was written by David and Solomon. You know, there are some pieces that we really believe were written by Moses as well. But probably the bulk of what we see in the book of Psalms was written by David, with Solomon and Moses having been the author of several of the others. Um, I really was thinking about starting with Psalms by quoting the passage about um, the the bad leaders dying off and the good being raised up to replace them and get rid of their wickedness, especially with our political situation right now. But I think I'm going to avoid that, although I just kind of let that out. Uh, I do want to draw specifically from my book, Deep and Wide, for today's conversation. Um, I don't remember exactly when I wrote these devotionals that I have for the book of Psalms, uh, designed to be read from March 9th through March 15th. I started writing this book in 1994 and finished it during the pandemic. So um, that would be about the time that I would have written these, and somewhere in there. I do know I started in Genesis. Um, there is a portion here of Psalms that I paraphrased quite a few years ago. Have hung it in different places in my house. Used to be hanging in my kitchen. It's hanging in my bedroom now. But the book of Psalms, or songs of praise, was written by Moses, David, Solomon, and others between 1400 BCE and 400 BCE, so a period of 1,000 years. It's difficult to look through. It's difficult to look through the book of Psalms and not actually want to break out in song. A lot of the Psalms were turned into choruses that we learned in church. Um, uh, that happened quite a bit in the 1970s. So a lot of the choruses that sing through my brain that could pop out at any time really might be drawn from things that were written in the 70s using text from Psalms. The first passage that I used for a devotional in my book was Psalms 19:14, and um, and when I look at this particular passage, I really would like to know the time and the context that he wrote this. I kind of imagine that he wrote this portion of Psalm 19, perhaps after the death of the baby that he conceived with Bathsheba, before he was married to her, while she was married to someone else, and perhaps um, perhaps he was writing this during that time. I A lesson we can draw from this is when we mess up, it's not usually due to an impulse, although that may sometimes occur. More than likely, we mess up after entertaining thoughts that lead to temptations, that lead to desires to satisfy some sort of urge. When David sings, "Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart," his choice of words were significant and important. It is important what we say and what we think and dwell on in our hearts and in our soul. The 23rd Psalm was another one that I focused on, but um, many of us can probably quote the 23rd Psalm, because the Lord is my shepherd, I have everything that I want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. There was a song when I was a teenager called The New 23rd, and it said, because the Lord is my shepherd, I have everything that I need. And I thought that was important, because it, instead of everything that I want, it's everything that I need. And I think it's important in life that we really distinguish between what we want and what we need. You know, one of the things that I continually struggle with is being content and being satisfied with enough. I think, particularly for the time period in which we're living, it's difficult to really understand the concept of enough. Um, we probably all could get by on much less than we have. We have changed and evolved this concept of what is enough until we are now living in excess. And the things that we think we need, we really don't need. They might be things that we want. I also looked at Psalm 34, verses 8 and also 22b. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in God. No one will be condemned who takes that refuge. You know, we if a storm is coming, we take a refuge in an interior room. We hunker down. We're looking for protection. We're seeking safety, and we're trying to distance ourselves from what might potentially harm us. You know, we would be wise if we took refuge with God, with authentically caring for all those around us and around people that are authentically caring for us. At the end of this particular song, it reminds us that forgiveness is freely given and fresh starts are abundant in the community of God's refuge. No one that seeks God's refuge and chooses to live following the life and lessons of Jesus can be disqualified and rejected by any other human. You know, it's important to note here that although I titled this book Deep and Wide, the subtitle is Knowing God's Inclusive Love. Psalm 46 is a good passage when you're looking at hypocrites within the Christian community, those that proclaim that God is doing stuff that God is not doing. You know, you can't be gullible. You need to be smart. You know, Earth has many systems and structures that are interdependent and interconnected. Um, Saying that God sends earthquakes or hurricanes because there are gay people in California, that really has no logic to it. God does not send earthquakes and hurricanes for punishment. In Psalm 55, we look at what do you do when you have an enemy that's insulting you or hurting you. David wrote this particular passage when he was surrounded by his enemies. You know, David in his lyrics also called for these former friends to be caught by death in surprise. I will say that in recent history, there have been politicians and leaders in our country that are doing really horrible things that's hurting a lot of people. And it's very difficult for me not to long for the time when their death arrives and they are gone and no longer hurting people. As humans, we will have human responses to human hurts and attacks. It is reasonable to take the attacks of former friends more difficultly. Eventually, we will have to forgive these friends and move forward. The longer we hold on to the hurt and desire for vengeance, the longer we will continue to hurt ourselves. Forgiveness is a gift from God, and we need to exercise that gift toward others. It is a certainty that we will have numerous opportunities to forgive others. I then take a look at Psalms 100. Um, know that the Lord is God. It is God who made us, and we are God's. We are God's people, the sheep of God's pasture. Um, I'm just going to read these couple paragraphs that I wrote here. I am what I am. I know who I am, and I know whose I am. I was born in Corpus Christi, Texas. Had I been born in Bangladesh or in Honduras or Vietnam, a lot about who I am would be different. Although we are a product of our birth, what we do with the characteristics and genetic materials with which we exist is what should be of the most importance. No matter where we were born, no matter our genetic material, no matter our human characteristics, we can be the people of God. We can be the sheep of God's pasture. How? Follow the life and lessons of Jesus as he shared the inclusive love of God with the words and his example. God does not discriminate. The embedded prejudices in the Bible are there because of the human element in the stories that were recorded. Prejudices and discrimination are a human failing and not of God. God does not discriminate, and neither can we if we are followers of God's inclusive love. One of my favorite passages comes from Psalm 139. God, you see me and know the real me. You know when I'm sitting and when I'm standing up. You know what I am thinking no matter where I am. You know when I'm away or resting at home, and you know everything I typically do. Even before I speak, you know what I'm going to say. You surround me and help me. It is difficult to understand how you could be so wonderful to me. There is no way and no place where I could get away from your care for me. If I'm feeling great, you are with me. If I'm depressed, you are with me. Whether it is morning or late in the evening, you are still there caring for me with the best you have. Even if I wallow in the darkness, pitying myself, I cannot hide from you. You continue to light my way with your love. You created me just as I am, as I was conceived, and even before my birth. I know that I am exactly how you intended me to be, and that you did not make a mistake. I know this to be the truth. And then I went ahead and paraphrased the rest of that, but I'm going to skip over that. And I'll read my commentary that's on page 149 of Deep and Wide. Those who know me best know that my favorite passage in the Bible is Psalm 139. There are many powerful and significant realizations to draw from this passage. God knew how I would be when I arrived on planet Earth. God knew everything about me. God knew, and I arrived anyway. God knew everything about me and every detail of my life that would come. God knew that the ureter between my kidney and bladder was too long and would cause problems. God knew that the carotid artery in my neck is also too long and has a twist. God knew that my eyesight would not be good, and had I been born in another time, would have been classified blind. God knew that my shoulders would be narrow and my hips would be wide. God knew, and I arrived anyway. God does not make junk. Even with what some would call flaws, I am exactly how I was supposed to be. God knew my genetic material, the contents of my XQ28 chromosome, my characteristics, my intellectual capacity, my physical limitations, and all that makes me me. And God knew it all. God loves me just as I am. I am a whosoever that is referenced in John 3:16. When David wrote Psalm 139, he was writing about himself. When I read Psalm 139, it is all about me. When you read Psalm 139, you should make it all about you. I hope you spend some time during this week looking at the Psalms that are included in the book of Psalms. And um, you embrace the metaphors that you see there. You embrace the symbolism. You make connections with what the writers have written with your own experiences. Thank you for watching this podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Words to ponder.